Nigerian governors.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program.
All right, governors of states face an increasingly difficult time accessing funds to govern the states. Revenue shared by the Federal Accounts Allocation Committee is dwindling, even as Nigeria's earnings are dwindling as well. More and more funds are going into servicing the ever-growing debts, while Nigeria's National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, is threatening zero remittance to the government coffers because, well, fuel subsidies are becoming unsustainable. Well, as it stands, well, it's becoming very, very difficult to ensure that there is ease of doing business in our different states. Anduna.
Yes, Georgina, more than ever before, it has become inevitable for state governments to shore up their, internally generated revenue, because this is the times. Unfortunately, these are the times that we've found ourselves in. Before then, we were used to the whole factor, or rather to the whole system of state governors, just coming to Abuja, sharing huge sums of money and going back to their states. But unfortunately, that is not the situation. Now, I recall that at the start of this administration, the administration had taken an initiative that's the Ease of Doing Business initiative. Now, what this was meant to do was to attract foreign, direct and foreign investments into the country. Well, the World Bank report has it that from 190 countries, we're up to 131. But when you look at the situation on the ground, it does not appear to be so. Yeah,
because it's not translating to the ordinary man in the streets, in the state government. And we are hoping that the state governors would have been more proactive in the sense opening up their shores, maybe more creative and innovative, opening up the shores for small businesses to thrive in their different states in order to generate internally generated revenue, so to speak. So it's very, very worrisome. And we ask this question: how will governors impact positively on the national economy by adopting the ease of doing business in the various states? Our topic today on Nigeria's Governors of Life: the role of governors in promoting the ease of doing business. And we have our guest already seated with us. I will be introducing him very soon, but that will be after the news bits. Stay tuned. The Delta State Governor Ifeanyi Okowa on Sunday said only truth, justice, equity and fairness to all zones of the country will guarantee a united Nigeria. Okowa stated this at the Thanksgiving service to mark the second anniversary of the 7th Assembly of the Delta State House of Assembly. The governor said he believes in the unity of the country and added that leaders must act in the interests of the diversity in the nation. According to Okowa, only such acts of justice and fairness to all the zones can encourage Nigerians to believe in the unity of the country. He noted that Nigerians were facing challenging times and urged Christians to be prayerful because God can truly turn things around for the nation. Governor Doyediri of Bayelsa State has again reiterated the ban on open grazing in the state, saying his government could not afford to expose its citizenry to the looming danger. Diri spoke in Yenagua during his maiden media chat to commemorate Democracy Day, insisting that the people of the state are predominantly fishermen and that there were no grazing routes in the state. The governor explained that though he was not countering the federal government's decision to resuscitate grazing routes, his administration had put in place a legal framework to ban open grazing and the movement of cattle on foot. He also reiterated his administration's determination to change the developmental narrative of the state, noting that urban renewal program, among other projects and policies of his administration, were part of the drive to give the state a new look and make it more attractive to investors. Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule has sought further intervention from the federal government to enable the state generate 50 megawatts of power from Farinruwa Dam in Wamba local government area of the state. Governor Sule sought the assistance of the federal government during the flag-off ceremony of the completion work on the Farinruwa Dam, initiated during the administration of Senator Abdullahi Adamu by the Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, at the weekend in Wamba local government area. The governor requested that that the Ministry of Water Resources assists the state towards generating 25 megawatts from the Farinruwa waterfalls and another 25 megawatts at the Farinruwa Dam when completed. According to him, the entire Nasarawa state requires only 10 megawatts of power, with the remaining 40 megawatts to be generated and uploaded to the national grid to power the Federal Capital Territory. And finally, Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State has appointed Aminu Gamawa as the new Chief of Staff. He replaces Mr. Ladan Salihu, sacked on the 9th of June alongside Secretary to the State Government, Commissioners and other political appointees. This is contained in a statement signed by Mr. Mukhtar Gadido, the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the Governor on Monday in Bauchi. Gamawa, a legal practitioner, was the immediate past Commissioner, the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. He is the Chairman, Bauchi State COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee 2020, and the Vice Chairman, World Bank State's Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability in the state. Gidado said Gamawa also served as the regional representative of the Technical Working Group on the Subnational Ease of Doing Business, Coordinator, Harvard Law School Graduate Forum 2011 and 2014, and a teaching fellow. And that's it on Newsbits on Nigerian Governors Live.
Yesterday on the program is Ogala Osoka. He's a legal practitioner based here in the city of Abuja. So without further ado, we're going to go straight to it and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening, Andona. Good evening, Georgina. Good evening, Nigerians. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. It appears that you've done this a couple of times, but yeah, so we'll go straight to it. Now, one of the major issues raised at the recently concluded public hearings on constitutional review is the adjustment of the revenue allocation formula. Now, will giving states more revenue improve the economy of the states?
The short answer is yes. It gives them a lot more money to do projects at the state level and also possibly at the local government level. The current sharing formula is not good enough, and a lot of states, particularly southern states, are clamoring for that number to be changed. So the simple answer to your question is yes, a shift in that number will allow the states have more access to funds to do more projects at a state level. Yes, that's correct.
But we've seen over the years the huge amount of allocations. You mentioned the south, but specifically going to the southeastern states, we've seen a huge amount of allocations run into trillions of naira. But when you go to these states, the projects you see on ground are not commensurate with the amount of money that have been allocated to these states over the years. So really, one would still wonder, giving more money, will it indeed, see any form of improvement?
Yeah, so there are a lot of issues of loss and mismanagement of funds. That is a thing. There's no going around that. I think the more pertinent issue will be the exclusive and the legislative list. It's not just about giving the state governors more money. They also need more power to do more projects in the states. So if you look at the second schedule to the Constitution, Part 1, it deals with the exclusive legislative list. If you look at Part 4 of the second schedule, it deals with the concurrent list. Now that deals with what federal can do and what federal and state can concurrently do. What we need to do is move a lot of those powers down to the state level. So it's not just about giving the state governors more money to do projects. We need to expand their scope of works they can do. So for example, things like mining should be done at a state level. You shouldn't have to come to Abuja at a federal level to get a mining level. Whatever is under the ground in your state should be accessible to you to generate revenue for your state. So to answer your question again, it's not just about more money, but there need to be devolution of those powers to the state level so that the state governors can efficiently allow investors and operators of business to come in and do that at a state level without the need to come into Abuja.
In other words, you're saying that there should be a decentralization of powers, like the states should have more powers to operate.
Yes.
Be independent of the center.
Yes, like I said, in the second schedule to the Constitution, I believe the first part, which deals with the exclusive legislative list, has about 70-something objectives. So the federal government has 70-something objectives we can do. The concurrent list has about 30-something. So between the federal government and the state, between the federal government there's 70, then the federal government and the state is about 30, of which if the state has a function that the federal government is doing, the federal government trumps. So then there's the residual list, which is the things the state can do. So to answer your question, we need to move a lot of those powers from the federal government to the state. It's worth noting that the fourth schedule to the Constitution also deals with the powers of the local government. Now, those also need to be expanded. Development has to come from downwards upwards, like planting a seed.
Yes.
You have to get the roots first, and then you get the fruits after.
All right, let's take a look at the issue of NNPC coming up and saying that they may not be able to make remittances because of the huge burden of the fuel subsidy that they're obviously carrying. And now states are feeling threatened. What does this say about the viability of the different states in Nigeria?
Okay, I mean, there are two issues that I think are pertinent here. Apart from the viability of the states, I think even for the federal government, a lot of our revenue over the last 40, 50 years has come from oil and gas. In the next 10 years, a lot of that is going to disappear. We've seen major oil companies like Chevron and them reinvest a lot of their incomes into greener, cleaner, more renewable energies. So the oil and gas revenue what we're relying on now as a country, whether federally, state, or at the local government level, is going to dwindle in 10 years. So it's not only about the viability of the states in generating revenue, there's going to be no revenue for federal. If we do not think of new creative ways to generate revenue, then there's going to be a problem, not just for the federal, but for the states and the local government, and for all of us as well.
I mean, we've been talking about diversifying the economy. We
Yes.
have agriculture, like you said, green energy, alternative
Yes.
energy. I'm wondering, why is the federal government not looking seriously into diversifying Nigeria's economy?
Yes, I also think it's a little counterintuitive. I mean, we see things like the Twitter ban. As UK is coming out of Brexit, one of their main focuses going forward economically is financial technologies, right? We saw Jack Dorsey, the head of Twitter, make a tweet about cryptocurrency in Nigeria, being a leader on that. Now, the ban on Twitter shows a lack of foresight of where we need to be going. Where we need to be going is digitalization and technology and financial technology. We have the market, we have the intellectual capacity for things like that. Now, we need a government that understands how to implement those kind of solutions and come away from oil and gas. And I mean, farming and agric is good, but tech, digitalization, and fintech is the future. We have bright minds in Nigeria setting up apps that are being funded by private equity firms from San Francisco. We need to find a way to promote people, young people like that, through tech and digitalization. So I want to criticize the government for the Twitter ban. I'm very strongly against it. I think the other way is to regulate it and to control it, as opposed to an outright ban. Countries like France and the United Kingdom are implementing a digitalization tax on this company so they can pay tax and generate revenue. It's a little archaic for us to take a position and say, we're just going to ban it. When it creates jobs for young people, it creates a market space for young people, even forget about the fundamental human rights issues it raises with freedom of expression and freedom of assembly.
I think from what the minister has said, I think there are talks are ongoing, or measures are ongoing to ensure a form of regulating that particular platform, probably in form of taxation and all that.
All right, but it's interesting you brought this topic. It's almost so tempting, sticking to the Twitter discussion. But let me bring you back to this. Most times when we talk about even diversifying the economy and even going as far as looking at the resources available to states, because when I sit down and I look at states like Yobe, and perhaps I think about the Jigawa state and a whole lot of other states across Nigeria, you think very little of them in what they can give or what they can, generate for themselves. But by way of, giving the listener some level of hope beyond, the petroleum, which is our mainstay, what do we have in these states that our state governments can actually explore?
I like you use the example of Jigawa. A very close friend of mine, Ahmed Ismail, is from Jigawa. I was in Dutse with him last year. We have a small agro business he was trying to set up. So there's things like sesame in Jigawa. That is one of the highest seed trading when we did the research. So necessity is the mother of invention, right? So if you allow the state governors to explore resources in their land, they will figure out ways to commercialize it. right? I don't think there's any state in Nigeria without any natural resource. If you go through the list of states on the thing and the list of resources that are available, every single state has natural resources. It's about the impetus, it's about the drive, it's about the willingness to go in and tap those things. We get lazy from handouts. It's everywhere in the world. Anytime you give somebody a handout, I think there's a phrase, give a man a fish or teach him how to fish. If you give a man a fish, he'll keep coming back for a piece of fish. If you teach him how to fish, then he goes back and he, buys a net, buys a trap, sets up a business for it. So I think it's the mindset of coming to Abuja to collect money. Once we correct that and devolve powers to the states, each state will figure out a way to increase their generation capacity.
Oh, okay. So off the camera, we talked about local government autonomy, financial autonomy for local governments. Now, do you believe that this will greatly increase the ease of doing business in states?
It's a good question. Where I went to school, I read law in England. I never met any of the national executives, but you'd have the local government council executives come to your house, door by door, to figure out what your issues are. Development in those societies is downwards up. The councillors and whatnot at the bottom level are the ones that drive projects and most of the contracts. The contracts at the federal level, which is the opposite of what we have here. In Nigeria, most of the projects and contracts are done upwards and then trickle down. But we need to flip that around. So to answer your question, I think if you're able to truly liberate the local governments and have them have their funds and have access to their funds and disperse them for projects that are best into the local government, you're going to see a new type of development.
So it's a problem actually with the state governors right now, because I recall, Gina, we have had this program for a couple of weeks now. And most times this issue of local government autonomy find its way, particularly
into
when
the
you're
discussion,
particularly when you're talking about state governors. So it appears, on the other hand, that they may probably be the ones shooting themselves in the foot after all, because from what you're saying, it has to be a downward up thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much obvious. We've tried it this way for about 20 years since the new democracy. We've seen it hasn't worked. Most villages are nothing to write home about. From Dutse in Jigawa to Umuahia in Abia, most of these places are grossly underdeveloped. I think we have seen this system fail already, so it's now time to try another module. Now, to answer a side question, which is about ease of doing businesses, there are roles the state governors have to play, even though you can argue that their powers are restricted by the Constitution, the Schedule 2, as we were discussing earlier, with the concurrent legislative list, exclusive legislative list, and then the residual legislative list. But even within their ambit, there are still things they can do, like implementation of service level agreements across their MDAs at a state level, for example, harmonizing tax at a state level. So there are roles and responsibilities a state can do to make themselves more attractive to investment, not just from foreign international investment, for investors from other states. So for example, myself, I might want to go and start a cocoa business in Ondo State. I would like to know how long it should take me. What is the cost of setting up in Ondo State? Those are service level agreements that should be implemented at a state level and might be able to assist the states in generating more revenue and ease of doing business.
I mean, you took that cocoa business from my mouth. I actually had that in mind to ask you, but would like to just just move a little away from business. Let's take a look at the issue of the call for secession by some states. Yes, this will be my last question. My producer is already asking. So, do you think Nigeria would thrive better as a smaller unit than as it is right now?
I'm from Abia State, the same state as Nnamdi Kanu, one of the major security issues we're having, and I strongly oppose that position. I'm a firm believer in Nigeria. I'm quite sure our differences make us stronger. You can use United States or even the European Union. People are amalgamating. We're stronger as a unit than smaller federating units. But I think the real issue here is equity and equality. When we see equity and justice across, then this secessionists will fall back naturally. The other point is economy. So like if these young people have jobs, nobody is going to need to tell me I don't have to be in an IPOB meeting or I don't have to be in an UDUA meeting when I have a 9 to 5. So once we're able to implement economic solutions and opportunities for young people, a lot of these agitations will die a natural death.
So the whole essence of this is equity.
Yes.
That's let everyone have a sense of belonging, and
Yes.
then make the economy favorable to young people who would want to start up their own businesses, and then
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So at this
you know.
point, we'd have to
Maybe we'll
have
talk to
to-
our producers and see
Yeah.
a way of continue having this, extending this conversation probably to next week. And if our guest is willing to, you know,
It's a very pertinent question, and I give you guys kudos for raising it. If more governors and stakeholders would listen and implement these things, I think then there's positive hope for Nigeria in taking us out of the dire straits we are. I'm open and welcome whenever you invite me.
All right, that's great to know. We've been discussing the role of governors in promoting ease of doing business with our guest, Ogala Osoka, a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for coming on the
Pleasure,
program.
mine. Thank you very much,
appreciate
Georgina.
you. Join us same time next week, 6:30 to 7 p.m. for another edition of Nigeria Governors Live. And from my colleague.
and don't forget, we're also going to be on radio. For those of you here in Abuja, we're going to be on radio Silverbird, Rhythm 94.7 FM on Fridays. Yes?
Yes.
Fridays at 9 o'clock
Yes.
in the morning.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned and stay safe.
The Nigerian governors.